We'll call the meeting to order. Schuyler Community Schools, in its partnership with parents, students, and the community, is committed to educate students to become skilled, knowledgeable, and responsible citizens in a global society. Notice of this meeting was given in advance according to state law by giving notice of the meeting to the public. Notice of this meeting was also given in advance to all members of the Board of Education. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting has been preceded by advance notice and is hereby declared to be an open session. A copy of the Open Meeting Act is posted in the front of the meeting room. We'll entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any items in particular to call out? A lot of prepayments.
Yeah, a lot of prepayments.
In this month, and then I think we're right on track where we thought we'd be.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, call the roll.
Roberts?
Yes.
Lanuza?
Yes.
Nisha?
Yes.
Hernandez?
Yes.
Robertson?
Yes. All right, public forum. If we have people show up that would like to speak their mind, they will be limited to 5
We have
minutes.
2 new representatives from SCA.
Well, welcome.
Hello. Hello. Nicole Taylor, President. Rachel Steemer, Secretary Treasurer.
Well, glad to have you here. We can expect you at every meeting now, right?
Sure.
You can expect us.
In person or maybe Zoom.
Okay, well, glad to have you here tonight. We'll move on to Americanism. So we need to have a meeting prior to September 1st. Can that be the same night
It can
as
be the
our?
31st. Just
I was going to say, I think that's,
before
and we,
our fiscal year.
yeah.
It's required in law. It's the only committee required in law. And it's pretty spelled out. Dave Gibbons will be the person who will lead that meeting because it's all curriculum, it's American history, it's all the protocols. And so we can do that before the next meeting if you want to do that. We just have to do it. So you're supposed to do it twice in the year. With COVID, we were all
Right.
canceled out, and so but I just need to make sure that we get one.
There's a meeting on the 31st, 6:30.
Whatever time you want.
I mean, the one that is scheduled right now.
I just put it out there at 6:30, but you can go anytime you want.
Well, I'm thinking if we have that one at 6:30, we could probably do this one right before.
Or
Dave, any idea what kind of length we're looking at with regard to that committee meeting?
There's a series of pieces of information that I have to go through as part of the law. And so, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, depends on,
Okay.
we have to open it for public.
So if we said 6 o'clock, we had to have a half hour, and it's not an issue.
Should be way plenty of time.
I'd rather be, that way than.
Why don't we do this? Let's set this meeting. You can all attend if you want, okay? Because we're just going to advertise it. And then that part of the meeting will be the Americanism Committee, because I think everybody can know more about it. 10 or 15 minutes in that meeting, and then we'll call the other meeting to order. So whoever wants to attend early can attend. Is that okay with you?
so let's just set it for 31st at 6:30.
6:30, and then we'll just start with that and then move on to the
Is that
other.
okay with you?
That sounds like a reasonable plan. Would someone like to make that motion?
I'll make the motion to set the date and time for the committee meeting
I will
for
second.
August 31st at 6:30 p.m.
I will second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Maybe just review those requirements between now and then, so that you kind of see what Dave will bring up, just in case you have questions in there.
There was a lot of that in the,
And then Sally will be here to take those minutes. So I'll post this as a committee meeting. And then we'll take the minutes in there. We'll actually record it. And then we'll get out of that meeting and then we'll
Go to regular. How's that? Yeah. So you kind
have your bases covered.
whenever you're ready, Sally.
All right, Lanuza,
Yes.
Misha,
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Robertcheck,
Yes.
Roberts.
Yes. Okay. Policy. I would move to approve the second reading of the second installment of the new and amended board policies. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
You'll see that some of these,
These policies are Title IX, but we have, our next group of policies are all Title IX. The federal legislation changed a lot of things. And so some of these policies that are in here for second reading, and if you read the correspondence from Jim Ruby, who is our board policy guy from the NASB, he does a pretty good job of explaining why things are in there. So if you read the board correspondence, there's 3 emails in there that help in the next item to help us understand those issues. And so I'll talk a little bit more about those when we adopt the new ones that are on top of these. So.
Yep. Any other comments or discussion? Go ahead and call the roll.
Misha,
yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Robertcheck,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Lanuza.
Yes.
Okay. Someone will make that next motion on Title IX policies.
I'll make the motion to approve new and amended Title IX policies as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Discussion?
There's a
A
lot.
lot of information in here. It also kind of changes how we have to do business as a school district because it outlines the coordinator of Title IX. And you also have to appoint an investigator for Title IX, and you have to appoint a decision maker. The only one that has to be a school employee is the coordinator. And that coordinator, you can split those duties between if there is a Title IX complaint for a student or Title IX complaint for an employee, staff, or adult, we can split them. And so if we put this on the 31st, I'll visit with administration and we'll look at who's in the positions to do those. Sometimes administrators don't want to be in that role, because they're evaluating staff and they're the ones who have to sometimes either suspend students. And so it seems like who's going to file it with me if I'm the one doing it. So it's kind of a difficult thing to see how we pass it around. But so I think there'll be a lot of discussion amongst the administration about how we're going to look at enacting these new policies. So take some time. We'll hopefully have second reading on these on the 31st so that we have them in before the school year, really, the fiscal year starts.
Go ahead and call the roll, Sally.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Robertcheck,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Lanuza,
Yes.
Misha.
Yes.
Budget, finance, and staffing. I would move to approve the new hire
We
recommendations.
gotta go to.
Resignation first.
Oh,
We have-
oh, I guess I didn't, okay. I would move to approve the resignations of Giselle Arroyo. Are all these? Oh, that's,
She's the only.
she's the only,
She's
The
okay,
other one on the resignations, I forgot to put a motion.
okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Just on to other things.
Yeah, she's going back to school and she wants to be a teacher. And so she's going back to school. It's in her resignation letter, so. So basically, thank you for your work. And so generally we say,
We accept your resignation and thank you for your service.
Yes.
we're part as parents.
Absolutely. Go ahead and call the roll.
Bobercheck,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Lanuza,
Yes.
Mishak,
Yes.
Hernandez.
Yes.
We will thank Giselle for her service to the district and wish her well in her endeavors. Next motion.
I will make a motion to approve new hire recommendation, pass with a motion, sorry. For new hire recommendation,
Hey, is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Moved and seconded. Oh,
Is the maintenance custodian bus driver person used to do the film?
Video, yeah. I don't know if this is going to be a long-term solution, but for the summer, we ran out of help with Terry being sick. So he's agreed to come on, but I'm not sure this is a long-term solution for him, but he's agreed to drive bus and
mhm.
he's running some mowers now because they're behind. So
You hire full-time or
no,
part-time?
he's full-time right now because Terry was full-time. And then we had Noah Beebe, and Noah had to quit. He's a college kid, so we ended the summer pretty short staffed. And with all the stuff we have going on, I think
Yeah.
it was a tough last.
last month for those guys, they pushed hard.
And then the rest are just paraeducators.
Repairs.
Yep.
And
They're all replacements, I think. And it's kind of hard to tell at this point because when kids come in and we're trying to assign paras to new schools, like we have 4 kids who come to the high school and they all need paras. And so,
moving staff around.
but principals do a good job of trying to match paras with jobs. And
So
Okay. If no other comments or questions, Sally?
Roberts,
Yes.
Lanuza,
yes.
Mishak,
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Bobercheck.
Yes.
Okay. Back to school plan review.
We spent all summer getting information and watching what other schools do. And then when you took action in June and July, to finally appoint the committee once we got that from our attorneys, then we put that committee together to finalize our recommendations. And on that committee, we have a school nurse, the administrative team. We have some requirements about how often that we have to meet. So we were pretty careful not to necessarily full classroom, but that administrators will get input from teachers because if we got to meet often. And so if we have rising cases, we got to meet more often. So pulling people out of buildings isn't necessarily going to be a good thing, especially at a time when we don't have, we have very few substitute teachers. A lot of our subcores are retired people, and some of them have said, I can't sub, so it's going to be, we're going to be stretched. We have right now I think 2 teachers who will need to teach remotely because of health conditions. We may end up with more, but those 2 teachers will come here to teach. We'll set them up in here in their rooms where they're isolated and they'll have their own bathrooms and kitchens, and we'll stream out to their classroom all day long. That can't be a real fun job. These people got in the business to work with kids, and when you're teaching remote, so there'll be a classroom that will have a para with a substitute license in there. I think one of them actually is a substitute teacher. The principals are getting those classes covered now, but the teacher will actually, according to the law, as long as that person can teach, then we don't take any leave. If a person is quarantined and they're asymptomatic, they can choose to teach and not lose their leave. But we've got to find ways to Zoom these people into their classroom so that instruction isn't interrupted. We'll get people in the classrooms to support that instruction and make sure that it's a good setting. We also have the case in our book of parents who either have children who have a compromised health or they're just afraid to send them back. So we gave them the option of remote learning. And those applications we just put up on the internet today, and the schools have them that parents have to request. And the way that that'll work is at the grade level that the parent is accepted or wants the request. And I did put that plan on the page tonight where you can see, because we can't guarantee the same level of education remotely as we can guarantee in a classroom. And so the attorney's right. If you sign this, you're saying, okay, I understand that I may not get the exact same as what's in the classroom. And at least we're giving parents the option of remote. Okay. Teachers who need it will give the option of remote. The only difference is that if you choose to teach remotely, I have to have the doctor know, because I can't make the decision, and I can't just have someone say, hey, I can't do this, you know. The CARES Act money is really, it's not that complicated, but it is detailed in that if schools would close, then we have different rules that we have to abide by how the CARES Act goes into effect. If a daycare closes, we've got different rules we have to abide by. I mean, there's a lot of regulations in guaranteeing wages and so on. As long as schools stay open, there is no wage guarantee. As long as daycare stay open, there is no money for, even if a child can't go to daycare. As long as that daycare is open, even if they're restricted from going, there's no money. So we had the attorneys come on and talk with we have 3 paras who probably will not be returning at this time because of health. So we had the attorney come on and explain all of the options that are available to us and them. And so just working through this whole pandemic and all the different scenarios it's just stuff that we have to keep straight. We'll get in trouble with IRS, we'll get in trouble with insurance, with CARES money, and so.
Just want to go to school every day and be fun.
It's yeah.
That's
But you know what? We aren't in a position to have staff get sick. I mean, if we certainly don't want that, or parents to have their children sick. So hopefully we're taking enough precaution in here, in the health side of it, that we can manage that. The side that we just started paying more attention to, and that's the social emotional health, the fear, the anxiety from staff, parents, kids. Okay. I think once we get into the swing of things, that's some of that might settle down because it's, we think the worst going in, but I think once we take the right precautions, we have good school nurses. We have 3 full-time, 1 part-time, and 2 subs. And I told them, put all 5 nurses on as much as you have to at the start to get this thing off the ground right. Use them whatever days you have to. Let's make sure we have enough support in school. make the things happen we need to have happen with the temperature checks and the
Social distancing of kids and
masking and so.
After reading the return to school plan, that what you highlighted, I wanted more information on the social emotional learning a priority. So can you talk a little more about how we implement that or how we do
We
that?
do have a committee put together, it's made up of guidance counselors.
And Dr. Leftall is the person in charge. He's also guidance counselor. He's the one in charge of that research that's going to go into that and how we support that with our staff and parents and students. And so we just appointed that a week ago. So they're supposed to bring us
Back some support back in. So, social
emotional health is a tough thing. So
but
like in the health section of it, we're going to rely on our nurses and East Central. When it comes to the other side, I need trained professionals to be able to help us do this. And so even though all of us have certain amounts of counseling and all that stuff in our degrees, we're not in that game. And so we're going to let the people who are in that
make some recommendations to us as to how we do this. So
I wish I had all the answers, but
Well, and again, I think the plan lays out, here's where we're starting.
Yeah.
And, we are hoping that, things go according to plan. We don't have a lot of sicknesses or those types of things. But we don't know what's coming our way, and we may have to adjust things, right? I mean, that's kind of the bottom line of it all. I mean, we're just trying to put our best efforts forward, with the how we're dealing with, the kids and staff and taking all those things into consideration, how we're dealing with lunches, how we're doing, and all those things. I mean, gone above and beyond, I think, in defining what those are going to look like. Again, in practice and in theory, maybe some differences, but again, you got to start somewhere, and so you live and learn a little bit too as we go. So
we are one of the schools that gives parents the option of remote learning. I know that Omaha just said you're all going to remote learning for this. They bought 60,000 devices with internet access in them. And so we don't have that. And we know we have a lot of homes that don't have internet. So for us just to say we're going to go to all remote would not be the best option for our families, especially when you're looking at all the other services that we do in addition to teaching academics. It's where their daycare, where their social emotional connection in school, where I've had people who have come in and said, please don't cancel school. My kids need this, And then I have the opposite end who are scared to death of us, So that pendulum goes both ends. And so
That pendulum swinging a long distance from one way to the other.
One of our opening videos in the morning for staff recognizes the importance of dealing with fear here, because we're going to deal with parents who have fear, and we're going to deal with some kids who do, and we're going to deal with staff who do, and it's real. And even though we try to do our best to minimize exposure and all that, we still know that we've got to focus on those kinds of things, So to have all the answers, I wish I did. I'm just saying we're paying attention to it and deal with it. So there's no real action on this, but it's the time for you guys to discuss, because we're going to be opening up here in a day or two with kids, and it's important that you guys know, because whether you like it or not, you're going to get some phone calls. Some people who will like it, some people who won't, some people who,
I have a question with regard to the online component. So is that going to be, it may be at the high school, things like
Apex.
Yeah, but what is it different at the elementary level, or how does that differ?
At the elementary level,
I actually attached it to my superintendent's report, and I can pull it up here and show you what it's going to look like at those levels. Okay, if you don't care, I'm just going to jump down to that, and then we'll come back. Superintendent's report. Okay, so here's the remote learning application. If you pull it up or you just look on the television, up on the television, I think I can make it bigger.
Okay, so this is from the attorney.
Who said that in the application, they have to sign off that they are the adult responsible for the education of that child. And because of COVID-19, that they're gonna opt for a remote learning option. District cannot guarantee your child will not be infected. That's why we do that. And given potential risk of COVID pandemic, the district will provide a remote learning option for parents who elect not to send their children to school. Okay? They need to understand it's totally voluntary. You can send your kids or you can keep them, okay? Under state law, if you don't send your kid to school, your child to school, then you can be held liable because you're in violation of state law. Here, we're saying if you don't feel it's safe, you don't need to send them. You're taking the responsibility. Some schools are saying send them or homeschool them. Those are your two options, pull them out. We don't want that. We're gonna allow parents a little more because we were a community of pretty high numbers at one point. And so we may have to act differently than the schools 10 or 15 miles away who may not have any cases, right? So if a parent signs this, okay, this gets them in that. Page 2 of it is just the same thing in Spanish. I can scoot this over. Basically the same thing in Spanish. Page 3 is what does the K through 6 program look like? The only two programs that we're going to offer K6 from the attorneys are reading, which is required by law, and math. Math is not, reading is. So there's 90 minutes of reading. So if you want to keep your child home, there'll be a Zoom time when they Zoom into their classroom and take 90 minutes of reading. And then there'll be 90 minutes of math. And they got to come on the time that the class comes on, okay? If you don't do that, then you're not following through on the remote learning plan. And we have to work with you because you're jeopardizing your child's right to an education. But if you come on, if you do not have internet access at home, you can come here to the district building and we'll provide you access. The reason I can't pay for your internet at home is that we're a 90% E-rate reimbursable school. And part of the requirements for us staying in the E-rate program is that we have to be SIPA compliant. In other words, you have to have all of the filters and all of the protection in that system to protect kids. Well, I can't protect them at their house, okay? So if a parent goes and chooses to do it at home, they have to have internet. Otherwise, we'll provide them here. They can go over to the other side, they can check in. If the parent comes in and sits with the child when they're going through, they'll be isolated and safe, okay? They'll clean up their room and they'll be the only ones who use that room, okay? So we've thought about what happens, are we not being fair to those people who don't have internet access at home, okay? In the middle school, for grades 7 and 8, so this would be a K6. Look at reading and math. However, let's say that Nina wants to keep her children at home. She can request other learning materials from us. If she says, I want the science book and I want the social studies book and I want any other resources that I can work on with my child at home, okay? But in the elementary, we're teaching reading and math, okay? The rest of it, you can do on your own, okay? In the 7th and 8th grade, it's the 4 cores: reading, math, science, social studies. And then they can request anything else that they want, okay? But not direct instruction. You won't get it from us on that. You just can't do it. It's just I would do it in PE. And so, okay. At the high school, we have a little more option because at the high school, kids can fall behind if we don't give them enough coursework. So at the high school level, all the subjects are open. They can take whatever they need to graduate. Okay. And then what we offer via Zoom, they have to stay with their class. If they check in every day at that period, then they're counted present, whether they're in person or whether they're virtual. Does that make sense? Doesn't matter. Whatever they take online, I can't count them present because I don't know when they're there, so I can't count somebody present who isn't there. But students can take Apex and they can take online classes that they do themselves. Okay. If there's a proctor for a test or something, they can come in here for the proctor test at the high school because we have an alternative school setting that they could come into this building and take that proctor test. Because at that level, it's not where when you're working with elementary kids, parents can proctor. When you get to the high school, it's a little different game. So probably telling you more than what you really want to know, but it's a different game at each level. Elementary is reading, math, and anything a parent wants, they can do on their own.
Are they tied into the semester or is it
Yep.
any? Okay,
Yep.
so it goes through the,
Everything. So this is the first semester application.
so if they started, they need to continue. That's my question, I
Yes.
guess.
The only thing is that the question is, if somebody opts for remote learning and they want to put your child back in a school, you really can't legally keep them out. Okay? But the yo-yo thing isn't going to work. So once you're back in, you're probably back in unless there's a reason. But we would encourage them to stay with your decision for that semester. We'll work with you. Okay? But so if I get 2 second graders who opt for remote learning, those 2 second graders would be assigned to the same teacher. And then that teacher, the negotiations team would look at what do we pay for those parents who are willing to Zoom and teach from and do the remote. So they would probably lose 2 kids out of their caseload, out of that classroom, and they would take those kids. And then they would Zoom. We do have an incentive plan. If you didn't have that, we couldn't pay anybody any extra because the negotiated agreement for this year is already done. So the incentive plan helps us be able to accommodate some of those things that we would do add-ons to. Okay. And it's going to be more difficult to manage a Zoom class and manage a parent, work with a parent at home. So I don't want it to be worse for the child, but at the same time, I think, you know, if that's what it takes for us to educate a child, I think we're willing to do it. One of the things that we did talk about was if we have anybody in the rural school who wants remote, I don't know if we have any remote teachers out there that they may take it from the in-town program. Okay, we're just going to wait and see what kind of interest there is in rural school for remote learning. Dave or Heather, any of you, or other things I missed on that?
I think that sounded basically
Okay.
I have a couple of parents that have shown an interest, so I'm not too privy to those.
So, you know, I'm sure we'll have staff who will step up, you know, and
Okay, other,
When you're talking about proctoring, I define that. I wasn't understanding what you're meaning by that.
like tests, you know, we don't let kids take some tests home. And so they would probably come in here, so they'd have a supervisor to give them the test, okay? Because obviously if they don't go back in the school system, you can't say, well, go up there and take the test. So we're pretty lucky that we have a pretty safe place here that we could have somebody proctor that test.
I understand.
So they might even come in this room and sit here, take the test and turn it in. You know? So it just can't be an unsupervised test if it's, you know.
Google the answers.
Understand.
Okay, so
So we think that we've tried to cover every base as a administrative team to say, how do we help parents who just are either, they have children who have compromised health? What do we do with parents who are just scared to death of this thing and just can't see putting their kids back in here yet? We're dealing with the teachers who have a doctor's note, you know, and
All
I
real.
think your question
question about how do you deal with social emotional, that's part of how we deal with it, is try to lower that anxiety to that.
Well, I'm sure social emotional is not a new terminology, but there's a lot of lingo that's becoming common now. I guess not something that I used before, but
it's been a big thing.
In schools for probably the last 5 years, because we actually had a behavioral counselor here, a
Your
behavioral
mental health counselor. And
and it was in a grant from to be the
group that provided it, and we shared it with Columbus. But,
not CHI, it was one of the hospitals. So that provided that counselor. I think she spent
2 days at the
high school and one at the middle school, or vice versa. But, okay.
Comments?
Any other questions? If you ask me next week, it might be different. That's the struggle we're in
Right now, is that we just don't know. We don't know because we don't know the spread. We don't, you know.
All right, well,
it looked like a lot of time and effort was put into the plan, and it
Well,
looks
the
like
plan
it's
that
as
you
good
saw,
Is not the plan.
well, the abbreviated plan. I mean, it looks as good as it can be for
we
going
just
into this
highlighted
thing.
it. I know
Lincoln put out a 165-page plan that I'm not sure that a lot of people read all the way through it. But before they even got started, they got whacked. And so they had to change what they were
we're
doing
doing before they even
even got out of the chute. So I wanted to make sure, and our administrators did, that we left enough options for people, that we weren't
pushing them to where, both from the staff.
staff standpoint and from the parent standpoint, because we need both.
What's your
One day feeling from staff.
Kind of nervous
Yeah.
and a little frustrated, but it's just because I feel like there's so many new concepts and so many new things, along with feeling not complete from last year.
Yeah.
And starting new, that it just feels so unfinished. You don't know where to start because you didn't get to close that chapter. And I know a lot of teachers are like, they're excited to see their new students, but they're more excited to see how last year's students are doing. And I really hope we can find a way to make that happen.
Yeah.
So that they could reconnect. That's really important.
Dave, were you out in the buildings at all today? Any thoughts from just the first day of staff?
No, I was just in high school for a little bit, but not enough to gauge any.
I heard from
The
the
middle school, they
was pretty upbeat.
in the middle school today, but
Talked to Bill 3 or 4 times, but I really never got a reading from you.
elementary. So that's why I asked you if it was
I'm sure there is.
some apprehension.
Okay.
As long as it will be an interesting day.
Yeah.
budget.
I put a draft together, and
I'm gonna need to meet with the finance.
finance committee sometime before the 31st.
Once
And
I
after the
get some
20th.
Evaluations.
I said, and after the 20th.
Yeah, after the 20th.
Because I believe that I think I know where the budget needs to be, but we also have to be aware of what happens with valuations and what we're asking for. So I'm just throwing out the first draft. This isn't the first draft, it's several drafts deep, trying to look at where I think things will be. But at least if I give this to you, it'll give you a little bit of an idea. I just put the general fund in there because the other ones, if you look at the front sheet, pretty much they're pretty much driven by their balance, their fund balances. So depreciation, employee benefit, the activities fund, school nutrition fund. So they're pretty much, if you have this much cash or this much money, you have to have a budget across from it. So it's the general fund that I put the detailed stuff behind it. So the first page of the general fund really kind of has it broken down by category. And then the second, third, and fourth pages are cash, where we think we'll get the money from. Okay.
So at least it gives you
Kind of a taste, so that when you come to the budget workshop, that you will have circled and highlighted and scratched through, and then you're thinking. What I see is we have an increase of almost 400,000 in staffing, and our budget's only going to go up 100. Because we're going to have the 500,000 that we went up because of COVID. Okay, that's what I tried to balance back down and see where I'm at. So just staffing, it's going to be 400,000 of that increase. So insurance went up. I mean,
Yeah.
To go of a punch.
it was the highest.
highest percentage this year. It's been in a while. But there's some things that I'm not going to tell you that I can't move these numbers some. Okay, once I see where ending cash balance is, it could help us, you know.
So I get nervous
When I start thinking about the fastest way to drop your tax assessing is drop your cash reserve. But if you lose state aid, you're gonna hate yourself because you can't run your school without making major cuts.
Well, how is that compromise coming along? Because I haven't, there was some thing in the paper, was it last Monday and I really didn't hear much after that.
it's still
Hot. There's still some senators who want to make this happen before they're term limited.
and so they'll go out in this next election.
election, so they'll be out before the next session. And there's some people who want this property tax problem to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
It gets hot.
And it goes out and then the bill stalls out and then somebody will throw an amendment in there and the bill will pick back up again.
So with this abbreviated,
Abbreviated late session like we have it. I've never seen a legislative session like it.
because
Something will be off and then the speaker will put it back on.
we need some property tax relief.
I'm not sure the proposals right now that the governor and the legislature will get on the same page because the governor does not want to fund it. And I can't just cut it, you know? So.
Anyway, so please look through the budget. I know I'm giving you a lot of stuff to look at.
We don't want to cut our cash reserve.
Well,
I should never say never. Maybe that's your solution. I don't know. I don't want to raise taxes a bunch on these people. I think it's a tough year. I think COVID's been tough. I think it's a tough year. I think we've got to do whatever we can to try to compromise in a budget to make it work. So
Yeah. Definitely lots of challenges out there, and it's not,
This one's a tough budget.
Yeah.
I've had
some budgets where we haven't had to do a lot, but this one is a tough one. So
we were supposed to get the results or what the record or the ask the
evaluation.
evaluations by the 20th or something.
Yeah.
Do you have any feelings where that's gonna be?
Well,
Thought about
Evaluations.
I know this was the year where there was the highest protest from what I understood. Usually there may be 100. I think there's over 200 is what I heard. Okay, now if a protest gets settled within the year, if valuations go down, we get the state aid. If protests don't get settled within the year, we lose out. And I've been in districts where there have been protests on property tax valuations, and it's settled in 13 months, and we lose $100 and some thousand.
If it had been settled a year earlier, we would have gotten
Back from state aid. So whatever this county does, I hope that it gets resolved within the year, so that if the protest lowers valuations, that we can recover that money.
So protests that have been filed right now, if they're taken care of before the first of the year, we could recover that with state aid.
exactly.
But if the protests that have been done now and don't get settled are agreed upon until after January or the fiscal year,
Well,
whatever.
until it's certified, so February, then we lose that money. And you can't recover it. So basically, people
get their,
valuations reduced in their protest. Then we got to go back after that money somehow, you know.
So it would be to the school's advantage if the commissioners got this all taken care of and done as soon as possible. If they're going to lower the valuation,
That, yeah.
then it could be recovered by state aid.
yes, because remember, it's your wealth.
Is what they're saying, that you can generate this money. Well, if you can't generate it, then it's in next year's correction. But if they certify next year's state aid and the valuations are in, you're done. So whatever happens in those protests, I think people have a right to get a fair value. And so sometimes they're successful in their protests and sometimes they're not.
The only way that we get hurt in a protest, really hurt, is if it gets settled after the fact.
And it goes down and we lose that money.
Because then you're gonna come back and you're gonna either recover that money.
You're gonna make cuts. And if you recover the money, you're gonna put it on the other people's backs. Okay. So August 11th, tomorrow morning, we have an 8 o'clock Zoom or 8:15 Zoom if you want to come in for it, unless you had any more budget questions. August 31st, board meeting, we're going to do our required committee meeting prior to that. We will
Do our budget hearing.
hearing on the 14th of September, so we'll have 2 weeks we'll get a week to get it in the paper and advertise it. We will have the budget hearing at 6:30 on the 14th, and then we'll have our regular September meeting to follow it. And then I did show you the remote learning application.
Any other questions on?
Superintendent's report.
So committee prior to the budget session at the 31st.
Yeah.
Any particular, how much time after the 20th would you want to meet or?
Depends. Sometimes I get it on the 20th.
Yeah,
Sometimes,
if you don't, yeah.
sometimes
Sometimes they don't come till the
I
20th.
guess, yeah, so when you get that, just we'll,
I'll,
the week before the other meeting, though, I guess
I'll just
either,
set a
yeah.
time,
Time for you guys to meet, okay, and you guys.
figure out what works.
okay. Brian, foundation,
We did have a foundation meeting.
wonderful.
Last Monday, and I guess that did have two major events prior to the previous meeting. So I will highlight the distinguished alumni that we honored 5 distinguished alumni at commencement, and I would like to recognize Sherry Ballack and Joyce Baumert for doing an exceptional job and kind of doing things on the fly, like what we have to do a lot of right now, and adapting and improvising and overcoming and fitting it to the commencement schedule, and really did a nice job of recognizing those individuals, and turned out to be a real nice event. And then a week ago, this past Saturday, was our annual annual golf tournament that, and Sandy Seckman really needs to be commended for that. She really takes that on and does the vast majority of the work for that. And most successful year to date, I think it was 18 or 19 teams that we've had. So like 3 or 4 more teams than the most we've had previous. And the preliminary numbers were about $8,500 net was generated with that. And I guess, Dan, if you don't mind, I think Sandy would appreciate listing off the whole sponsors. There were a lot of the companies that work with the school, and so she does a good job of going out and reaching out to different businesses, especially ones that the school works with. And so whole sponsors, business whole sponsors, D.A. Davidson, Pinnacle Bank, Agri-City, Skylar Home and Building Supply, Houseman Construction, EMC, El Pueblo Tire, Clark Anderson Partners, Americom Communications, Carlin Seckman, Eeks, Ewerts Drywall, Homestead Bank, School Security Systems, Love's Signs, Midstate Engineering, Renneke Motor Company, and Bierman Contracting. A number of alumni whole sponsors we had, but I guess I wanted to list off those businesses that a lot of which we do work with, and they wanted to support what we were doing. I think that's, we did have a brief conversation about, because one of the comments I had with the golf tournament from a second-year teacher was they were really appreciative of the foundation putting an event on like that to welcome new staff or welcome new teachers, which that's not necessarily the intention of that. But, and that is the other comment, there was a very large amount of school people that participated in the golf tournament, from support staff to teachers to paras to administration. The large majority of the people that were participating in it were associated with the school. And so that opened up the conversation about what can the foundation do to better, welcome new staff members, whether they're new to the community or not. And in this COVID crazy time we got, planning an event is not likely, not probably wise at this time, but Joyce Balmer was going to draft a letter to just as a small token of, welcoming, the foundations behind them, the new staff, and welcoming them to the school or to the community. And it's something we'd like to expand upon, in the future, I guess, whatever. But we didn't really,
What does it look like?
right now, you don't even know what's allowable to do anything. And so sending a letter, we felt was allowable and appropriate. So that is one thing that we're going to do. And again, I will, any staff that may be listening or any administrators that are on getting the message to the large amount of staff that was there supporting the foundation in that golf tournament. There was a lot of green Skylar shirts being worn. It was a good school pride event, I felt.
Here
I
I
had Sally, and Penny were my team. And I thought, oh, okay, let's see. And Sally is the only one who won, she won flag prizes because she got longest putt. She was just like a beast on the course.
It was the longest one. Good job, Sal.
Sally.
Oh,
That's all I got for my report.
all right.
It was fun.
So, we had a good time.
I'm glad you had, the turnout was so good too. That's always nice to hear.
Yeah.
Wasn't able to get there this year, but I do have a note from Amy Johnson thanking for the recognition for 35 years of service. And again, all of our staff members, as they get in that many years, we appreciate all the things that they've done over the past. And again, just share with you that her comments, very appreciative of the gift and stuff. So other than that, I don't have anything else. I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
I moved to adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second?
I will second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Sally, any key spelling issues there on the
So whatever you do, call it a